All right, this is Srinivas Rao, the new host of the Search Engine Journal interview series, and I'm here with Alan Bleiweiss. How's it going, Alan?
Doing great.
So, Alan, you've been a long-time SEJ community member, so tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what has brought you to doing the work that you do today.
Okay, great. So early on in the process where I was working on building my own personal brand in our community, for professional reasons, obviously, I started just getting involved with the blogging that was out there, Search Engine Journal and others, by reading and then providing quality comments. Mm-hmm. And then simultaneously I had my own blog. And back then Ann Smarty was the editor at Search Engine Journal, and she asked me to guest blog. And the first couple of articles I wrote were really well received, to the point where she just asked me to be a regular contributor. And that's how it all took off, you know.
Well, it's interesting because these days, you've got sort of two schools of blogs, or two sort of families, sort of the bigger SEJ type blogs, or the pro bloggers, copy bloggers that have been around for a really long time, and then people who are building their personal brands by guest blogging at these places. And what I'm curious about is, in addition to writing content, how do you really leverage a platform like SEJ to build your personal brand? Because I know you have done that in a way that most people haven't.
Yeah, so for me, the writing needs to be pure, okay? I don't believe in just writing content for the sake of getting a piece of content so you can bury a link in it. I don't. That's the foundation for me. It's always quality and being willing to go the extra mile, because I believe in the concept of being of service in the world, and that when you're being of service and you do it in a way that you're passionate about something, that's when your best is going to come through, and you're going to get people who receive it the same way. That's the golden key for me. It's the quality based on a passion that you have on a particular topic that you really care about. Everything flows from there.
Well, you've brought up three words that I think are really interesting. You said purity, service, and passion. And what I'm curious about, there are a lot of people who have SEO knowledge, or they're, like myself, a lot of people have blogging knowledge. Yet I think we all have sort of a different way of presenting that knowledge to the world. And what I'm curious about is, how do you stand out amongst the sea of noise when you have similar knowledge? How do you communicate it in your unique way?
Sure. Well, that's a question I had to ask myself. When I first started blogging, I was like, SEO itself is not rocket science. It's not all secrets. It's all known by at least some people in this world. So what's different about what I'm going to do? Or why do I need to just throw more of the same out there? And the whole concept of coming from passion and being of service flows from a bigger life philosophy that I've developed over the years that's worked for me just in showing up in life. And where that all melds together as an answer to your question is, just because something has been said doesn't mean that it's been said in a way that other people are always going to receive it the first time it's said. The same message can be repeated many times by different people, but it can be said in different ways. Whether it's the attitude, the tone, the way you bring information together, and it's all going to be based on the fact that I have unique experience. I'm not the only SEO in the world. I'm not the only one who's had success with SEO, but I've had it uniquely to my own path in life. And so my writing comes from the fact that I do have a unique perspective in what the end message looks like because of that. And the way to succeed in getting that on paper is to just write naturally. What do you naturally want to say? The more you can understand what you naturally want to communicate and how you naturally want to communicate it, the more likely the end result is going to be so unique in just enough ways that, because there are so many people out there wanting this information, enough of them are going to be able to identify with your unique presentation of that matter.
Well, I really appreciate the fact that you brought in the whole idea of your whole life perspective. It's not just about the knowledge base that you have, but tying in your own life experiences to that knowledge base. I find that, I think everybody who knows me online knows that I'm an avid surfer. And strangely, I can take something like blogging and I can bring in analogies from that part of my life and still make them highly relevant. And what I have found often is that people who are able to take the parts of their life that they're very passionate about and tie it to that thing that they want to talk about or what they're known for are the ones who really do find a lot of success online.
Yeah, and that gets churned over the years into a lot of cliches and a lot of philosophies that are boiled down to an oversimplification of do what you love and the money will follow. Mm-hmm. Okay, because that's the do what you love part is what are you passionate to do in this world? Not what you think can make you the money, but what do you really care about? And how can you apply that to a business model, right? And as long as I continually, consistently stay focused or refine the focus of what I'm doing, whether it's the actual work or the writing of what I'm doing or what I've found, on is this something I really care about? Can I truly bring passion to it? I'll have the consistency of that quality. Because that's the other factor as well. You write one really great article and then never do anything else again. But consistency over time also matters.
Well, let's actually talk about that in a bit more depth. I mean, before we hit record here, you and I were having a fairly interesting chat around the whole idea of consistency and quality. Oh, yeah, we've been recording now, but as on our walk over here, we're having a fairly interesting chat about the whole idea of quality, consistency, and time. And I think as the world gets noisier, that is going to become more and more important. So I mean, with my knowledge of SEO, one of the things I'd always seen is that there are a lot of people who try to game the system. I've heard, black hat tactics, all sorts of stuff. But what is the key to actually search engine optimizing content? The thing that I've always found to be sort of the tricky balance is to write naturally, but also for search engines. And I've always heard this from people who say, write for people first and search engines second. Yeah. And how do you do that tactically?
Right. Most people make a handful of critical mistakes, and then the ripple effects of other things that they do just makes it worse. First and foremost, you can't just write good content. You need to stop first in advance and recognize one of the most fundamental concepts. The words that you use to describe what your products are or your services are based on your experience, your background, your vernacular, and not necessarily the people you're trying to reach. They care about what you want to talk about. They're looking for what you're wanting to communicate, but they don't necessarily have the exact same words that they use. And so you need to find the balance between maintaining your own unique way of saying things and merging that with the language that the people that you're trying to reach use. Keyword selection, right? So you don't just throw a bunch of keywords into your content because then you read garbage and it doesn't sound right. And if it doesn't sound right to your visitors, it's mostly over-optimized and Google's going to not like that.
Right.
They're not perfect in what they do by any means, but they're sophisticated enough to know when you're going too far because you're trying to force it. So it's balancing them. What are the words that the people that I'm trying to reach use to talk about the topics that I want to communicate on? Write my own natural way of writing, but include those words. That's the foundation of it. And then it's all about consistency of repetition of signals across all of the different signal points that is SEO. It's consistency and repetition from page titles to the URL to the navigation to the content to off-site signals, all over and over and over again, being consistent with your message.
Well, you brought up off-site signals. What do you mean by off-site signals? What are those?
Right. So off-site signals are, of course, for SEO, links are the primary off-site signal. It's that off-site message that this site over here is trustworthy and high quality. And social media now is becoming more of an off-site signal as well, right? But again, let's even talk about that. So off-site signals, let's get a whole bunch of links and we have to use the words that people are trying to find us with. So we'll just use the same phrases over and over again in all of our links. That's not natural. if you step out of your mind for a moment and you think, what is the internet without search engine optimization? It's a bunch of people talking in ways that are going to fit their desire to talk and communicate. And so links are going to have a variety of those phrases and some non-phrases and generic words in their links. That's natural. So it's all of these things. It's your own voice combined with thinking about your users or your visitors or your customers or clients, and getting a natural end result. It's not easy. It may used to have been easy, but it's not easy anymore. But it's still not rocket science. It just requires critical thinking.
Well, I love that you brought up the whole idea of a natural result, because as a reader, when I end up somewhere that I've ended up based on something that I thought was going to be a certain way and it's not, that's incredibly frustrating. And I love that you brought in the social media piece, because I think that community development actually plays a big role in this nowadays, much more than it used to. As much as we like to think that, okay, you know what, I am going to search engine optimize the heck out of this thing, if it doesn't resonate with people, it doesn't seem to matter.
Right. And that's... Social media, even before social media was a thing, has always been a factor. Early on, it was on an individual case-by-case basis. If somebody went to your site and they bought your products or hired you for your services and they were unhappy, they were talking about you anyway offline, right?
Yeah.
And so it was happening anyhow. Now it's been magnified. And because it's been magnified consistently for long enough, and the search engines recognize that just relying on links as an off-site trust signal wasn't enough, they're bridging into the, we need other ways to figure out what people care about, what their real experience is.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up the whole idea of something being magnified over time. Again, that seems like a theme that's been sort of repeated throughout our conversation. Same applies to SEO, same applies to social. That's why I'm always very disturbed when I see people who basically say, I want to buy 5,000 Twitter followers. And it's like, well, that's great. You'll get them. You can go on Fiverr and buy them, but that's not going to lead you anywhere.
Yeah, no. Where it'll lead you is to a false sense of accomplishment. And then more likely than not, a whole lot of trouble.
Well, I think, we measure vanity metrics, and that's where we get into real trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's, look at me, I've got 50,000 followers. So what? Okay. Yeah, in certain circles, to a certain degree, new people, real people who see that you've got 50,000 followers may want to follow you because they think you've got something to say. But if you don't have consistency over time to get enough real people involved, it won't matter in the long run. And I'm all about long term. I'm not about short term. I'm about sustainability and long term success.
So you have been sort of a long-term SEJ advocate, evangelist, and we're talking about community and how this develops over time. And what I'm curious is, how do people cultivate more people like you within their communities?
I think the message needs to be, it can be shaped in several ways, but a primary way that it can be shaped is not just talking about the value of involvement for the sake of SEO, right? There's so much more value that can come from participation. I really do have this spiritually based foundation. So, for example, I spend a lot of time when I can on SEO Maz's Pro Q&A system answering questions, and it's always, don't just offer an answer for the sake of participating. What new quality can you bring to it? The reward of giving back, whether it's writing an article or it's speaking at a conference or it's answering questions in a professional environment, whatever it is, just the reward of that alone on a karmic level is awesome, right? But it's also about genuine, authentic quality. And I get rewarded in so many ways, right? So I personally don't get paid to write articles. I've been asked a number of times, and I have never taken anybody up on that. So I pick and choose where I write. And when I do write, though, it's truly participating in the community because I care. It's that passion model. just one article I wrote last summer, and this is something I'm just now letting the public know, but I've talked about this in Twitter a couple of times. Just one article I wrote last summer has generated me over $75,000 in income from new clients who found me and really respected what I communicated, and reached out to me because they were like, "We got real value from you," you know. And I get new business from my participation in the SEO Moz community and at conferences and just giving back for the sake of it. You know, the ways you can get value as a participant and a contributor are countless. I could list probably a dozen other values that you can get, and that's just a couple of really big examples. So.